everyone, I'm Nina Goradia. I've gotten a request to make a video about affirmations. And actually, many people have asked me this question over the years, and I've thought about it quite a bit. And I'd like to give you my take on using affirmations. So I think there can be positive uses for it that really benefit us, but I think there's also a way they can be used that could potentially set us up for a fall. So, the most obvious example would be if I say, I'm going to have $1 million by the end of this year, and I put all this energy into it, work really hard. But then if I don't make that much, then have I, made my happiness contingent on getting the $1 million? And then I feel really sad. I've set myself up for a fall, basically, with those kind of affirmations. Now, it doesn't mean that you can't have a goal, that you can't hope for the best and also try really hard. But in that place, saying something like, I'm a hard worker. I work towards my dreams. I work consistently and daily for my dreams. I think those types of affirmations are much more beneficial and less likely to set you up for a fall. They still could a little bit. Like if you had a day where you didn't do anything and you're like, oh, I'm supposed to be somebody who works really hard for my dreams, right? So a lot of them run the risk of becoming ego identities that we're taking on. But I do think they're better than having negative ego identities. So it's something where I think that they can be used strategically, provided you kind of understand what you're doing. So they can definitely counteract negative self-talk. But when we are using them in ways that we're just kind of getting like hopium, right? Like this fake hope for something that we actually don't know if it will happen or not. The truth is, I have no idea what's going to happen tomorrow. I don't know what's going to happen in the next second. And so if I'm trying to base my happiness on these things with my affirmations, then I'm just kind of running that risk of letting myself down. I'm actually living in an illusion, right? I'm trying to imagine that something will happen so that I can be happy. And I'm living in my imagination when I do that. So I actually have some affirmation cards from Byron Katie's deck that I want to read to you. I think that they're like just some of the best affirmations I've ever read. So I'm going to grab those. So these would be like spiritual affirmations. And these are some of my favorites in this deck. This is inner wisdom cards. And you could get them online, but so here's one. No one has ever been angry at another human being. We're only angry at our story about them. So these cards, these are not going to soothe the ego. They're going to crush or collapse the ego. So, as this channel kind of straddles around soothing ego, soothing trauma, healing those wounds that are on the individual or personal level, it also talks about widening the perspective to being, to non-dual awareness, to recognizing the true self. And so some of these cards would be affirmations in that regard. And the ones I already gave an example of, like I'm a hard worker, and you can use those. You use affirmations that are personal that won't set you up for a fall. But I want to share some of these spiritual non-dual ones because they're so freeing. Like she just cuts right to the truth of some things, and you don't have to buy into all this. If it doesn't resonate for you, just let it go, just drop it. But if it does, notice how it frees you from even needing an egoic affirmation. You're just like, oh, like I understand clearly. So I have lost the attachment to the desire I had in the material world, because that attachment is what's going to cause me suffering, right? So if I'm trying to use affirmations from the point of view of attachment, it's going to cause me suffering, like anything I'm attached to. So here's another. You can only see what you believe. Nothing else is possible. You are what exists before all stories. You are what remains when the story is understood. So these are just they can be so freeing if it hits you in the right way. A thought is harmless until we believe it. It's not our thoughts, but our attachment to our thoughts that cause suffering. The ego is terrified of the truth, and the truth is that the ego doesn't exist. And you don't have to use these spiritual affirmations in a way to invalidate the ego. Like, if that's not the time and place, if that's not what you need, don't do this. But in a place where this is freeing for you, you can definitely use this and start cultivating the mind to start seeing things in a way that is more true than the story that the ego has. Here's another: personalities don't love, they want something, right? The ego can't love. The ego wants, it's attached to things, it resists, it identifies, it grasps. It's when the ego quiets down and we have the space and we're living in our hearts, well, this energy moves from the ego down back into the heart. That's what loves. It's the space that we all are, the space in between thoughts, the space that holds everything in existence, the space from which everything arises. Here's one: if I had a prayer, it would be this: God, spare me from the desire for love, approval, or appreciation. Amen. Everything happens for me, not to me. So I can see how this one sometimes might feel like kind of invalidating my experience. Like, I don't have to think of it that way. This is just an option if you want to frame things that way and if that helps you. But don't use it to gaslight yourself. If you're feeling emotions because something happened, feel them through. But then this would be more for cultivating the mind to understand a higher truth, and just try it on and see if it works for you. If it doesn't, just, put it aside. An unquestioned mind is the world of suffering. Oh, I can really, resonate with that one. When I'm perfectly clear, what is what I want. Because when we're clear, there's no attachment. Because when you're clear, you're perfectly at peace. You can see that, whoa, everything was an illusion. How I was seeing things before, I was disconnected from my true self. And that made me, give rise to desire. And then I wanted things to try to fill that disconnection that can only be fulfilled by connecting with myself. When I'm connected with myself, I can handle whatever's happening, because happiness and peace never came from those things that are happening. They come just from me being connected with myself. Seeking love keeps you from the awareness that you already have, that you are it. I love affirmations like this. I can notice my vibration changing right now. Can you guys feel that? As you have these very high frequency affirmations, thoughts aren't personal. They just appear like raindrops. Would you argue with a raindrop? Some people think that compassion means feeling another's pain. That is nonsense. You can't feel another's pain. You can only feel your projection of it. Interesting, right? Because we can hold space for people, but we actually don't know what they're feeling. So we can ask them, what is that like for you? What is your experience? And I can hold space for that. I can still have compassion. So she's not advocating against compassion, but advocating against thinking that we know what somebody else's experience is. We don't. We need to ask. Reality is always a story of the past. And what I love about the past is that it's over. Nothing you believe is true. Knowing this is freedom. And again, this is very high level, right? Where some people might feel gaslit. No, that really did happen to me. And so the thing about that is the facts did happen. So we don't want to, try to talk ourselves out of our experience. Yeah, facts happened. But the beliefs I create from that, they're not true in an absolute sense, because they don't apply for every single situation. So I might have taken, that happened to me, so I'm not good enough. So that's the belief I took from it. That's not true. And then I take that belief and I apply it to all these situations. So we want to question that. So the facts remained of what happened, but the story I created, which is beliefs, that's my interpretation. That's kind of how I spun it in my mind. And I didn't know better. That's why I did it, right? So, that helps me get clearer. Maybe that's not true, how I'm seeing it. Let me see. All the advice you ever gave your partner was for you to hear. We only fear what we haven't understood. Ultimately, I am all I can know. So I just read a few, there's a whole bunch more, but if affirmations like this help you, then by all means use them. I have some others by Louise Hay and somebody else too that I don't remember the name. And I find some of them helpful and others I find like, no, that one doesn't really resonate for me. So I think they can be used in this way that can help you. And then there's others that you'll notice that you say something like, I am, a kind, worthy person, and you might feel sadness when you say that, right? So these affirmations can also be barometers to check if how you feel is in sync with that affirmation. So if I say that and then I feel the opposite, whoa, there's something to clear there. There's something to look at. There's something that needs attention. A part of me doesn't believe that, doesn't feel that that's true. So this can actually be a springboard from which to do some of the somatic feeling work. You can say that, feel it through, and then you can say it again and test if it feels more in alignment for you, or if there's other things that you need for it to feel more in alignment. So these are some of my thoughts on affirmations, and I'd love to hear your thoughts as well. Please feel free to share below. I'll see you next time.